This is our Disney News Hour, and greetings everyone. With me, Shifarao Lagao. Do stay with us. The House of People's Representatives has ratified 4 loan agreements between Ethiopia and the International Development Association and endorsed 2 road charter proclamations, including the African Road Safety Charter and the United Nations Convention on Road Traffic. In addition, the House has endorsed the International Development Association Additional Financing Agreement for Enhancing Shared Prosperity through Equitable Service Program. The agreements ratified are part of the government's new loan strategy that has stipulated a borrowing scheme by shifting from commercial to concessional loans, as well as using long-term loans to support projects. The House also endorsed 2 road charter proclamations, the African Road Safety Charter and United Nations Convention on Road Traffic. Now, the federal government's decision to withdraw its military force from the state of Tigray remains to be an epicenter of political dialogue in the country and beyond. Talking to ETV English, the Japanese and Djiboutian ambassadors to Ethiopia have dubbed the move impressive and important to undertake humanitarian assistance. Habtamo Shagri reports.
The Ethiopian National Defense Forces have been taking a law enforcement operation against the TPLF gangs over the past 8 months in the state of Tigray. Recently, the federal government's decision to withdraw its military force from the state of Tigray remains to be an epicenter of political dialogue in the country and beyond. Talking to ETV, the Japanese and Djiboutian ambassador to Ethiopia said the government's decision helps to bring about solution and end conflict in the region.
I would like first to congratulate the Ethiopian authority for first that election going smoothly and peacefully in Ethiopia. This is a very, very important step for the Ethiopian people. The second one will be, of course, this unilateral ceasefire. It's also a great achievement for the Ethiopian peoples. I think it will be very important, and we hope to see this implementation doing well.
The humanitarian ceasefire as well as the national dialogue, that was quite encouraging. But at the same time, we are still concerned about some of the Japanese people who are stuck in Mekelle and safely returned. That's what we'd like to deliver as well.
According to the Djiboutian ambassador, the recent unilateral ceasefire agreement helps to address various socio-economic complications in the region. Mohammed added Ethiopia has been playing an unprecedented role to bring strong Africa in the continent. The TPLF forces need to accept the unilateral ceasefire agreement made by the federal government so as to bring peace and stability in the region, the ambassador said.
This unilateral ceasefire, it's also a great achievement for the Ethiopian peoples. I think it will be very important, and we hope to see this implementation doing well. Of course, we expect also from the TPLF people also to respect the ceasefire because of the Ethiopian population. I think it will be very important. For the humanitarian access will be also important to save lives. I think it's really important because at the end of the day it will be the same people. So it's really important. Ethiopia is very important for Africa, and especially for the whole Africa, and as well for Djibouti, because if something happened to Ethiopia, it's automatic to Djibouti. So we are following the situation very closely, and we expect and we are proud of the Ethiopian authority to find out solution.
We hope that all parties also respect the humanitarian works, including the Eritreans, that they should be out of the country, and we hope that people will be served based on the purpose of this ceasefire.
Now, the interim administration of Tigray region has called on the United Nations, other agencies, and the international communities to speak loud and condemn the evil and inhuman horror acts being conducted by the TPLF in Tigray after the withdrawal of the federal security forces. According to a statement issued by the interim administration, the actual situation in Tigray following the withdrawal of the federal security forces is worrisome. The statement is presented as follows. The proposal by the interim administration to the federal government for a ceasefire to deal with the complexities of saving lives in Tigray and addressing the humanitarian situation was a result of an extensive on-ground pre-takeover and intervention of assignments by the new administration. The objectives of the interventions by the federal government in Tigray and by extension that of the interim administration were clear from the onset when it comes to restoring interrupted public services and catering pressing needs of supporting the conflict-ridden and protracted communities that understandably expected to have its own dynamics and complexity. The interim administration has been working with all the relevant stakeholders and international aid agencies and shall continue to do so from Addis Ababa, where it is moved following the decisions by the federal government to withdraw protection forces from Tigray at large and Mekelle in particular. In consultation with federal authorities and the direction by the PMO on the way forward, the interim administration's continued focus will be ensuring civilians are protected and relative calm is in place through a possible scenario of principal discussions with identified and considered parties in the conflict. However, the actual situation in Tigray after the withdrawal of the federal security forces in fulfillment of the unilateral decision for a ceasefire is worrisome, as some early reports are indicating citizens, especially who are alleged supporters of the interim administration's life-saving mission in Tigray, are being targeted and massacred by the TPLF special forces and armed elements referring themselves as TDF. Particular concerns of the safety of hundreds of experts and their families who have been voluntarily serving their people during the past 7 months in Raya, Nderta, Mekelle and Adigrat, and also those of refugees in Tigray remains unsolved, and a swift and coordinated rescue and protection measures are overdue. The large-scale and region-wide attacks and lootings happening in Tigray by the rebellious armed groups has also vandalized the stores of humanitarian aids in many locations across the region, causing a huge setback in the fight to prevent and mitigate the challenges of looming famine in Tigray. This irresponsible and reckless act of TPLF and its allied forces is causing an exodus of fleeing citizens in thousands from all parts of Tigray, including the capital Mekelle, fearing for their lives and that of their family. The federal government of Ethiopia is daily registering a huge influx of refugees requesting to go to different parts of Ethiopia, and also some immigrants are fleeing to Eritrea. I call upon the UN and other aid agencies as well as the international community to speak loud and condemn these evil and inhuman horror acts of the TPLF and other armed elements referring themselves as TDF. The entire international community should be aware of the continued calls for aggression by this group, despite the greater chance of coming to the peace avenue, rerouting and abandoning its destructive course of war, and the community at large should also exert concerted efforts, giving way for a peace dialogue.
The TPLF group that were pursuing continued its belligerence to protect few individuals. In furtherance of its agenda, it began conscripting young and elderly civilians, women and men, to fight highly trained and armed men of their country. This exposed the people in Tigray for the military confrontation that are not prepared for. We will augment humanitarian efforts in the region, including distribution of food and non-food items from warehouses across Tigray. The National Disaster Risk Management Commission and the 5 humanitarian agencies deployed in all waradas of the region are set to resume their function. Following the organization of peaceful and successful national elections this month, efforts are now geared towards building a stronger, united, and democratic country. In this connection, the Ethiopian government is developing a roadmap for inclusive dialogue to ensure a lasting peace and stability.
Now moving on, the Ethiopia-Russia Military Technical Cooperation Joint Forum kicked off in Addis Ababa. The forum aims to enhance military cooperation between Ethiopia and Russia in technology, skill transfer, and experience sharing. State Minister of the Russian Defense Finance Division said the establishment, diplomat, military, economic, and social cooperation dates back to 1898, adding that the two nations maintain ties in multifaceted areas. Following the discussion between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Deputy Prime Minister Demeqe Mekonnen, and President Vladimir Putin, the two countries have been witnessing close ties in multifaceted areas of cooperation, the State Minister added. A scholar at the Ethiopian Civil Service University, Ndale Nuguse, blames the wrong motives of Egypt and Sudan to take the matter of the GERD to the Arab League and the UN Security Council. Gazaun Chani reports.
Talking to ETV English, Ndale Nuguse said Ethiopia's stance on ground Ethiopian Renaissance Sudan has always been positive that considers the regional economic cooperation. The scholar also stressed the on and off tripartite negotiation between the three countries has nothing to do with water shortage in downstream countries. Ndale further underscored the wrong motive of Egypt and Sudan to take the matter of the grand Ethiopian Renaissance Sudan to the Arab League and the United Nations Security Council is irrelevant as it indicates a colonial agreement.
In all aspects, GERD has brought to them many benefits, but still, they want to use the GERD so as to diverse their domestic problems. They have brought to, they brought the case to Arab League. You see, this is against international law. The GERD is in Africa. 3 countries are in Africa. So why Arab League interfere? This is so as to make the issue more complicated. It doesn't work. So Ethiopia shouldn't tolerate that. Even the international community, I think, doesn't promote such kind of naked interference from Arab League. Again, you can see even the United Nations Security Council is clear. You should solve your problem, based on the 2015 DOP, Declaration of Principles. So still they want to make aside that agreement. That agreement is the only agreement for these countries. Otherwise, there is no agreement among these countries. Colonial agreement doesn't work at this time.
He underscored that Egypt and Sudan don't have any kind of legitimacy over Ethiopia's natural resource, highlighting the interest to divert the internal politics.
Regarding GERD, Ethiopia is clear. Ethiopia's intention is supported by international law. Ethiopia's concern is supported by African Union. Ethiopia's intention is supported by even the peoples of Sudan and Egypt. From the very beginning, the Sudan government, the current Sudan government and Egypt government, try to use the GERD so as to divert domestic problems. You can see at this time inside Sudan, there is no good governance. There is a shortage of basic needs. There are a number of problems. So they want to use GERD, as scapegoat regarding their problem. You can see, problems even in Egypt. You can see the suffering. You can see the dictatorship. You can see those, the Egypt government doesn't have legitimacy.
He pinpointed that Ethiopia is always committed to the trilateral talks of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Sudan under the umbrella of the African Union that will help the negotiating parties ensure a win-win solution.
Ethiopia didn't participate on those colonial treaties, so it doesn't work on Ethiopia. Even it doesn't work for other Africans at this time. This is, the issue. So even the Security Council, regarding my intention, has, has been looking, at these issues, carefully. Even they already did it before. Still, you should solve your problem, using African Union, because the right organization is African Union. Still, they are in dilemma because they don't want to solve the problems. Because if that problem has been solved, they may expect a kind of internal, problems maybe has been seen in the two countries. So still, regarding international law, regarding diplomatic principle, already they have been defeated. Ethiopia already has taken the upper hand. Still, based on the 2015 DOP, Ethiopia has started feeling of, the second feeling. This is in the right direction. Ethiopia is not against 2015 DOP.
Egypt and Sudan are still attempting to exert unnecessary pressure on Ethiopia through different means, Ndala pointing out.
Ethiopia started building its Grand Renaissance Dam in 2011 on the Blue Nile River, a major tributary of the Nile. The downstream nations of Egypt and Sudan are concerned that the filling of the dam could lower the water levels in the river in their countries. In this connection, Daniel Kassaun has produced the following story.
The River Nile plays an important role in the economic, agricultural and industrial sectors of East African economies. Ethiopia began filling of the dam last July, and it said the process will take 5 to 7 years to complete. Ethiopia informed Egypt on Monday that it commenced the second stage filling of the GERD. The official Sudan news agency reported the same news on Monday, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs released its statement in response. Egypt's Water Resources and Irrigation Minister spoke out again the news of the second filling of the GERD. Egypt and Sudan are now seeking United Nations Security Council deliberation on the GERD, and the Council will convene on Thursday to discuss the issue, but it's unlikely that the issue will not be a serious matter of the Security Council. Last month, the Arab League, of which Egypt and Sudan are members, also called for United Nations intervention in the dispute. Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs dismissed the Arab League meddling in a statement on Tuesday. The League of the Arab States has a reputation for its unfettered and unconditional support to any claim Egypt had presented on the issue of the Nile. The ministry added the League is undermining its relations with the African Union. Tripartite negotiations supported by the African Union, the United States and others have failed to produce an agreement in recent years, as law-repairing countries insisted on binding agreements. The United States Department official said last week that making a deal is a matter of political will on the part of Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan. The diplomatic row over Ethiopia's mega dam on the Nile River continued this week with the reported start of the second filling of the dam and a disagreement on the Arab League's role in the dispute. Sudan's foreign ministry said that Ethiopia's declaration that the second stage filling of the dam has begun may not solve any outstanding issues. But Ethiopia time and again said it is disappointed by the Arab League for addressing the United Nations on a matter that does not fall within its purview. The League of Arab States has a reputation for its unfettered and unconditional support to any claim Egypt has presented on the issue of the Nile, the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry reiterated. The ministry also stated that Ethiopia is engaging in the trilateral negotiations in good faith and continuing its utmost commitment to make the African Union-led process a success, and calls on the two law-repairing countries of the Nile to remain faithful to the ongoing African Union-led negotiations. Ethiopia also reiterates its request for the international community to encourage Egypt and Sudan to abide by the accepted principles of international law on the utilization of transboundary water resources.
The United Nations expresses its commitment to supporting the AU in facilitating tripartite negotiations over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This remark came while the spokesperson of the United Nations Secretary General briefed journalists after the Council held closed consultation on various issues. Here is what he said.
We recognize and strongly support the role currently played by the African Union chairperson in facilitating the negotiations between the three countries. We again call on them to work with those three countries.
The spokesperson for the Secretary General has urged the three countries to deal with the issues based on the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization.
Solutions to this need to be guided by example, by solutions that have been found for others who share waterways, who share rivers. And that is based on the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization and the obligation not to cause significant harm.
Ambassador of Ethiopia to Uganda, Alam Sahai Mesaret, has held discussion with Ibrahim Uwizeye, Minister of Water, Energy and Mineral of Burundi. Their discussion mainly focused on issues related to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The ambassador briefed the minister on the current status of GERD and Ethiopia's plan to continue the second stage of filling the dam as per schedule. Stressing the importance of electricity for development and growth, the Burundian minister said his country is waiting for the completion of the dam to purchase electricity from Ethiopia. Welcome back. You're still watching at this News Hour. The Ethiopian diaspora in various states of the U.S. are planning to stage a demonstration in New York City to oppose the meeting of the UN Security Council on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The United Nations Security Council is set to hold a meeting on the GERD today following the request of Egypt. Peace and Unity Task Force Ethiopia in Washington, D.C. coordinator Taso Malkahiwot told ENA that the aim of the demonstration is to oppose the UNSC meeting on GERD, which Ethiopia strongly believes will only be resolved through the AU-led negotiations. Now in business, the State Minister for Finance, Eyob Takalin, says enhancing productive capacity is critical to avert the inflation rate in Ethiopia. Talking to ETV English, Eyob said Ethiopia has registered notable attainments in stabilizing its macroeconomic challenges. Jerusalem Betsia reports.
According to the Central Statistical Agency, inflation in June rose by 24.5% compared to the same period last year. Food inflation has risen by 28.7% in June compared to the same period last year. Talking to ETV English, State Minister of Finance, Eyob Takalin, said Ethiopia has registered remarkable achievement in stabilizing macroeconomic challenges.
We have successfully tackled a number of macro challenges. Ethiopia was on the verge of serious financial crisis. I think we've averted that challenge, and we can now boldly say we have a very sustainable financial system in Ethiopia. We have done a wonderful job in terms of our debt profile in general. This country had huge debt burden. We still have a number of debt to pay back, but in terms of debt sustainability, I think we have done a wonderful job. But also overall macro stability is by and large, I think, on a promising track, except inflation.
However, Eyob said creating new job opportunities for the youth, improving productive capacity and giving priority on supply resolutions are among the government has taken as a solution to address domestic inflation in the country.
So when we talk about inflation, it's not just the yearly growth that should worry us. It's the overall accumulation, the overall cost of living increase. That is the most critical thing. We enhance our productive capacity. When the farmers produce more, they get more. When our manufacturing facilities are producing more, they get more income. That is the most important element to, I think, minimizing the cost of living. But arresting inflation is also very critical. To that end, we have a very prudent monetary and fiscal policy. You saw in this budget, for instance, we have made sure that whatever additional resource we mobilize to fill the revenue gap has to be mobilized from the market, not from the National Bank directly, because that would be inflationary. But also we have a very, I would say, stringent fiscal stance, because that would be very, very useful. But overall, if you look at the basket of products that we use to measure inflation, the big chunk comes from critical food commodities. 60% of it comes from items that like onion, meat, milk, and so on. So when we say enhancing our productive capacity, focusing on supply solution is really the critical solution, we mean business here. So what we do in that regard would significantly help us reduce the rate of inflation. But of course, the market structure also had significant problems that we need to address, that we need to correct.
Addressing the fourth special session of the Parliament this week, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said despite challenges from COVID-19, locusts, flash flood, unfinished projects, conflict and global inflation, this year's growth is expected to be more than 9% compared to the 2019-2020. Eyob said as COVID-19 had affected on Ethiopia's domestic economy, the government has been giving priority to help the economy rebound.
Because of the policy measures that we've taken, because of the sensible decision that we've taken, we've managed to shield off the Ethiopian economy from the worst that could have happened if we hadn't taken those policy measures. Our effort to protect jobs, for instance, the policy measures that we've enacted to make sure businesses stay active, and our focus in shielding some productivity sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, has paid off. And that's why, despite, of course, you can't discount the impact of COVID, but overall, we have survived. We've done much better than our peers elsewhere. But hopefully, the global economy would be in a much better situation next year as the corona pandemic comes to an end, which means tourism would open up. There will be more business for the airway, telecom, communication industry in general.
As part of the initiative to boost the country's economy, the House has endorsed the International Development Association additional financing agreement for enhancing shared prosperity through equitable service program.
You're still watching at this news hour. A quick reminder of today's top stories. Scholars lash out at Egypt and Sudan's wrong motives to internationalize GERD issues. Is it from me this edition of this news hour? Many thanks for watching us. Stay safe and take care.